Quick fact. Do you know how pregnancy was determined in ancient Egypt? Women of ancient Egypt, according to information preserved on papyri of that time and surviving to this day, used grain instead of a modern pregnancy test and ultrasound to find out the presence of pregnancy and the sex of the child. For this purpose, the woman had to urinate in two bags with different grains, one with barley and the other with wheat. If the barley sprouted, then a boy should be born, but if the wheat sprouted, a girl should be born. If the grain did not germinate at all, this was considered a sign that the woman was not pregnant. In 1963, French medical historian Pierre Galunghi tested this medical folklore and concluded that it determined pregnancy with 70% accuracy. This is due to a special hormone found in the urine of a pregnant woman. When the experiment was repeated with the urine of a non-pregnant woman or man, the grain did not germinate. Did you know that a yellow ticket is the official passport of a prostitute? The yellow ticket was an alternative document to a passport, which in the Russian Empire gave the right to legally engage in prostitution. Any woman could get it. To do this, you had to come to the police, register, and hand over your passport. In return, a yellow document was issued, which is why it was called a replacement document. The ticket consisted of 8 pages, that is, 4 spreads. On the first spread, there was a photo of the owner of the document. On the second, 13 points of the rules for supervision. On the next 3 pages, 16 points of rules for public women were printed, and the last page was for medical notes. The ticket girl was obliged to attend the bathhouse. She was forbidden to evade a medical examination. Plus, she wasn't allowed to wear makeup. A woman with a yellow ticket had no right to work as anything other than a prostitute. It was possible to get a regular passport back, but it was very difficult. Do you know who is depicted on the famous poster The Motherland is Calling? The face of the woman depicted on the famous propaganda poster from the Great Patriotic War, The Motherland is Calling, is familiar to everyone. The poster was created at the very beginning of the war, a few days after the invasion of German troops in June 1941. The artist of the poster was Georgian artist Irakli Toidze. The artist's main task was to create a generalized image of a woman mother, in which every soldier could see his mother. When the artist was working on the poster, his wife, Tamara Toidze, ran into the room shouting, "War!" With her hand, she instinctively pointed to the open door, from behind which could be heard messages about the beginning of the war from the Sovnform Bureau, transmitted over the street loudspeaker. This gesture inspired the artist to create the poster. "Stay there and don't move," he told his wife, and immediately began to make sketches. Tamara was 37 years old at that time, but she looked much younger, and in order to create a generalized image of her mother, the artist depicted a woman older than her age. Do you know who was the first to issue a decree on the protection of animal rights? This was the feudal ruler of Japan, Tokugawa Tsunayoshi, who went down in history under the nickname Dog Shogun. In 1687, he issued a decree on the prohibition of the taking of life of living creatures, the earliest known law of its kind in world history, prohibiting, on pain of death, the killing of dogs, cats, and driven horses. The townspeople had to affectionately address stray dogs as high nobility dog, and those who did not comply with this requirement were subjected to corporal punishment. Shelters were built for breeding dogs, where they were entitled to a diet greater than that for peasants. These measures, along with the financial crisis, caused growing discontent among the population. Before his death, the ruler bequeathed that his orders regarding dogs would be carried out forever, but his successor, 10 days after Tsunayoshi's death, repealed this law. Do you know why the killer who killed the 20th American president chose the Bulldog pistol? James Garfield became U.S. president in 1881, but just 3 months later, there was an attempt on his life. The president was at a Washington train station when an assassin shot him in the back with a Bulldog revolver. The killer was Charles Guiteau, an American preacher, writer, and lawyer who had mental problems. He chose an expensive Bulldog revolver with an ivory handle as the crime weapon. He chose such an expensive pistol because he wanted the weapon to look cool in the museum, where it would end up after the assassination attempt. Do you know how one German aristocrat being beheaded saved his friends from death? This story happened in 1336. King Ludwig of Bavaria sentenced the nobleman Dietz von Schauenberg and 4 of his associates to death. They were guilty of starting a rebellion against His Majesty. All conspirators were to have their heads cut off, and according to knightly tradition, King Ludwig of Bavaria asked Dietz von Schauenberg what his last wish would be. Dietz's answer surprised those present. He asked the king to pardon his condemned friends if he ran past them after his own execution. At the same time, Dietz von Schauenberg clarified that the condemned would stand in a row at a distance of 8 steps from each other. Only those whom he can run past, having lost his head, are subject to pardon. The king laughed at such a request, but promised to fulfill the wish of the doomed man. Dietz arranged his friends in a row, measured the agreed distance between them, walked away to the required distance, and knelt down in anticipation of death. The executioner's sword whistled. Dietz von Schauenberg's head flew off his shoulders, and his body jumped to his feet. And in front of the king and courtiers, speechless with horror, the conspirators rushed past. Having passed the last one, that is, taking more than 32 steps, it stopped and fell to the ground. Stunned, the king decided that there was a devil involved, but he kept his word, and Dietz von Schauenberg's friends were pardoned